Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ange, if you haven't met me before, and today I'm going to be doing a Hoya care video. So I want to start off by saying that I'm definitely not a Hoya expert, but this is the way that I'm taking care of my Hoyas in my house, so if you're interested, then let's get started. Okay, so let's start off with the lighting requirements for Hoyas. So I found that in my house, that Hoyas do the best with bright indirect light. So what that means is that I put it right up really close to the window, but I don't put it in a spot where there is a lot of direct sun that hits it. I would say that morning sun is okay, but I wouldn't recommend putting it in direct sun in the summertime when the sun is really strong. If you do put it in direct sun, I find that it can damage and burn the leaves, but if you are trying to put it into more of a highlight situation, I would recommend letting it kind of acclimate and not putting it into a lot of sun straight away. If you do put your Hoya in low light, I do find that it can get quite leggy. So what that means is there'll be a lot of space in between each of the leaves and the nodes, and that's not really a look that we really like in our houseplants. We want them to look really nice and lush and bushy. So with your Hoyas, they do flower. They make these beautiful waxy flowers, and having them in a higher light position will increase the chance of flowering. I've never had a Hoya flower on me before. It is something that I'm really wanting, but I know that Hoyas have to be quite mature to end up flowering. With growth of Hoyas, I do find that they do stick out a tendril like this before they actually put out leaves. So you'll find that maybe there'll be some really ugly vines coming out, but you don't want to cut them off because leaves will come later. Also with flowering, your Hoya might have an old peduncle, so I'll put a picture of what a peduncle looks like, and your Hoya will reflower from those peduncles. So you definitely don't want to cut those off because then you're just not going to have another flower next year. Now for the soil requirements, I find that since most Hoyas are epiphytes, which means that they grow on other things, kind of similar to like an orchid would, they do really enjoy having a really airy soil mixture, something that's not going to hold on to too much moisture and stay wet for too long. So what I use is I'll use a combination of my normal potting mix, perlite, and also orchid bark. So the orchid bark is really chunky, and also the perlite adds a lot of aeration to the soil. I pretty much use an even ratio of all of them, like a third, to create my soil mixture. But I do know that you can grow Hoyas just in a straight orchid mix. However, I find that that dries out too quickly for me. So I'm having to water it every few days or so, and that's just not really what I want in my lifestyle. However, if you are an overwaterer and you do like to kind of be a helicopter parent over your plants, then maybe that's a good idea because it's going to dry out sooner and you can water it more often. So that airy soil mixture is definitely going to allow the plant to dry out quicker, and it's also going to allow the roots to have a lot of aeration around them. I don't really tend to like to repot my Hoyas very often. I only repot them when they're heavily root bound. What that means is normally the pot itself feels really tight and there'll be a lot of roots coming out of the bottom. Hoyas don't really like to be repotted very regularly, so I do find that you can keep Hoyas in the same pot for numerous years. If you are going to repot your Hoya, definitely do it in the spring and summer months because you want to reduce the shock that the plant is going through. So now we're on to watering. So I definitely don't like to say, oh, you need to water your plant once a week or twice a week, because it really all depends on the type of soil that you're using, the season, the lighting requirements, and even the pot that the plant is in. So something that I have invested in, and it is my favorite thing, is a moisture meter. So I just got this from my local Bunnings, but you could get this from your local hardware stores or online. And I use this to tell me when to water my Hoyas. So if you look at the moisture meter, sorry, I'm going to have to put my hand here so you can actually see it. So if you look at the moisture meter, you can see that when the plant is completely dry, it'll be at like the 1 position. When it's more moist, it'll be in the green, and when it's just soaking wet, it'll be in the blue. I like to wait until my moisture meter says that the Hoya is at a 1 on the dryness level before I water them. Another way you can tell if your Hoya needs to be watered is that the pot feels really light, if the leaves itself feel a little bit soft or they're a bit wrinkled, For example, this is my Hoya obovata and the leaves are quite semi-succulent. If I was touching this and it felt a little bit more soft, or I could see a wrinkling effect on the leaves, then I would know that the plant is thirsty. And because I wait for the soil to get absolutely bone dry before watering, when I water them, I give them a thorough soaking. So I don't just pop in a little bit of water, I fully drench this plant and allow it to completely drain out before putting it back to its position. Some of the thinner leafed Hoyas, like my Hoya polyneura, I do find likes to stay a little bit more moist than my other Hoyas. But when I'm looking at my moisture meter, I will wait until it's just hit the dry section to water it, but I won't wait until it gets all the way bone dry. However, that's going to be a little bit of trial and error and see what your plants enjoy. You're definitely going to water your Hoya more if it's the summertime, if it's getting a lot more light, and also if the plant itself is in like a terracotta, because terracotta allows that extra moisture to kind of evaporate through the pot. Say if it's in plastic, you'll be watering it a lot less. Now for feeding. I find that my Hoyas aren't really heavy feeders, and I also found that when I was feeding them too much, they actually dropped their leaves of their new growth, which was really sad. So I've learned that I like to feed mine about once every month or every 2 months even in the growing season, so that would be like spring through to autumn. And I don't fertilize them at all during the winter time. So I use a mixture of sea salt, which is a soil conditioner, and also a mixture of fish fertilizer, just to give it a little bit of an extra boost. I would say Hoyas do appreciate humidity, but it's definitely not a requirement of them. I find that the Hoyas I keep in my bathroom, which have a little bit of extra humidity, grow a little bit quicker than the ones that are not in the bathroom, but I don't think that your Hoya will suffer if it's not in a high humid space. Okay, so I thought while I'm here, I'm just going to show you how I propagate my Hoyas. This is definitely not the best time of the year for me to be doing it since we are in the autumn months, but I'm just gonna do it because I want to. So this is my Hoya Hindu rope, which is the variegated version. And when I did haul this plant, I can see that there's a long section here without any leaves. I can tell that they did have leaves before, but they were dropped at some point. I'm not sure why. Every little section here where leaves were growing are what are called nodes. And that is where roots and new growth is going to pop out of the plant. I personally like to propagate my Hoyas straight into soil, but you can definitely pop them into water first if you want to. So the way I'm going to propagate this plant is I'm just going to cut as close to the oldest growth as I can. I'm just going to cut right here, right before that first node. Dropped it on the floor. So you can see on this cutting we've got 2 nodes that are sticking out, and this plant is going to shoot out new growth from any of these old nodes. So I've prepared some of my soil mix just in a little see-through container, and in here is a mixture of perlite, potting mix and orchid bark like I was saying before. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pre-moisten this soil. I don't really want to make the soil soaking wet, so I'm just going to use a spray bottle just to lightly dampen it. Hit me in the face. So you can see that the soil is a little bit moist. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to stick these 2 nodes into the soil. So you can see that 2 nodes are underneath the soil and we've got the top part just laying on the soil. So with this, I'm either going to put the lid on it if I can find it, or I'm going to cover it in some saran wrap, and that's going to help keep that humidity high. You want to put this propagation into bright indirect light. Definitely a lot of light will help it. And if you do end up covering your propagations, you are going to want to open the lid every day or every few days just to get some fresh air in and make sure that there's no mold or kind of just staleness going on in the plant. So I find that this typically roots up in a few months, but since I am in the colder months, it might take a little bit longer. But I'm a patient kind of gal, so I'll just leave this on my windowsill and I'll update you guys if it does grow out some roots anytime soon. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, definitely click the thumbs up button and hit subscribe if you haven't before. I upload 2 videos every single week, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye!